Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, MAN, on Wednesday lamented the average maximum lending rate charged by commercial banks on loan to its members that rose to 35% in the quarter two of 2024, up from 28.6% in quarter one. MAN made this known in a report titled "MAN Position on the Assessed Increase in Interest Rate" published in Q2 2024, MAN CEO's Confidence Index, MCCI. The report showed that the aggregate index score of the manufacturing sector decreased from 53.5 points to 51.9 points in Q2 2024. Furthermore, the report indicated that the lending rate to manufacturers during the period under review of Zenith Bank PLC was 30% on the average, while Access Bank PLC and United Bank for Africa UBA were 32% apiece. For First Bank of Nigeria PLC and Ecobank PLC, it was 35%. It added that the continuous hike in MPR have tightened financial conditions for the productive sector, with the average maximum lending rate charged by commercial banks and manufacturers' finances rising to 35% in Q2 2024 from 28.6% in Q1 2024. MAN blamed, in quotes, the erroneous disposition of the Monetary Policy Committee MPC of the Central Bank of Nigeria to fighting inflation with continually hiking of the monetary policy rate for the current lending rate to the manufacturing sector. Joining us now to take a look at this latest development is Otunba Francis Meshioye, President, Manufacturers Association of Nigeria. Great to have you. Let's talk about how this hike in interest rate is affecting manufacturing and affecting your output.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm happy to be here. Just like you have said in your introduction, the NPL has significantly rising to 26.25 currently. And definitely this has one immediate effect at the bank. It means the lending rate will go up from wherever it will be, it was at the beginning. Like you said, your analysis or introduction, it was around 25, thereabout, sometimes ago, going up to about 35. What happens now is, before that time, we are having actually about 32% interest that we are paying on interest on our loan. Currently, it is ranging between 32 to 37%. You will find a very few banks who will give it to you at 32, 33, but oftentimes it is 35 to 37%. You'll agree with me that this means that the cost of funding has again jumped up to all businesses, and the impact on the manufacturing sector is very enormous. What you can do immediately as a true business person is to first look at your process and find ways to reduce cost. If you are hitherto running an efficient process, there is little you can do in a very short time. So you are likely to go on to see how to pass this cost to an extent on the consumer. You may want to reduce your profit margin, but definitely it will impact on the consumer. Now, the impact of consumer tests use certain things. Looking at the inflation rate generally, like I've mentioned, there is no sufficient money for patronage at this point in time. So consumer will prioritize the goods and its demand that they want to make. So what will happen is that there will be low demand on the goods. So, and what will happen in this case is that since demand has diminished, then we'll be having a lot of stocks, also stock again. You remember in our last publication or reports, we reported about a huge unsold stocks going to trillions of naira. So, which means that we'll be having piling of unsold stock mounting up in our warehouse. The effect of this is not palatable because you need to understand in the first instance that these stocks were funded or by loans taken from banks, and the interest is going up and the stocks are unsold. You are getting the business choke up as it is going that way. Eventually, it's going to visit the manpower, there will be reduction in our employment, people will lay off staff, already saturated markets where there is no, the employment is very high, will continue to increase, and the attendant corollary of maybe increase in crime rate and some other things will come up. So in the whole lot, it's not really even good for the economy and it's very worse for the manufacturing sector because it means you will not even have money to even do any research, to be more innovative, and become very less competitive, both locally and regionally and internationally. So this is part of a few things I can mention to you now that really are coping with. And you will note that already we're battling with the high cost of production, high cost of doing business. So it is indeed not helping in any way to the ease of doing business.
All right, thank you very much for painting that picture for us. I think it's quite important to understand the impact of hikes in rates, especially because this morning we looked at maybe we've seen some kind of positives in its effect on inflation. At least deceleration for the first time in months has happened, even though the inflation numbers are still high. But I want to ask you about other interventions by this government to ameliorate the challenges facing the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria as a result of these hikes. Are there any tax incentives, at least for instance, or what would you ask this administration to do? Because I don't know if there's any going back yet, at least as of now, on these hikes.
Thank you. This is a very nice one. I think I can look at it in this way. One, if you say the inflation rate is a little bit lower, I mean, I really don't want to dwell into this because it depends on the way where you're coming from. But however, the administrations have tried to put a few things in the pipeline, which makes us to be hopeful. A recent one is the withholding tax bill, which has been really worked upon. Manufacturers will not be paying withholding tax, and which is very good. This means that we could have some funds which would have either to been withheld, available for businesses. But this is not really sufficient because it's just a percentage, and you know that what it just means that even if that is not there, you remember that there will be income tax you have to pay in the future. So you need to be shrewd in finding a way to get ready for accumulate funds. So when you have to pay your tax in the future, you have money to do that. It's just an advance tax payment. So that is what it was. So it's not really a major issue, it's good. However, we need intervention that really will help the businesses. When the governor was making his speech, that is CBN governor, he discussed about having a collaboration between the monetary policy and fiscal policy. And this is one thing we have been really impressing on the government in the past. So if in the wisdom of the CBN governor that this path is what it will take to reduce the interest rate, because that is the argument of the MRC, that is a way to combat the inflation rather. So if that is the trend, then there will be a fiscal measure that really softens it for businessmen in manufacturing sector, because high cost of funds will not make them to be competitive. And you can't grow at 25, 30, 35, 37% rate. You can't work. We thank the government for intervention fund of 75 billion introduced some time ago, that's about a year ago, which is the offering which we're trying to access. We have applied to an extent some of our members. But this is not really anything to go by because we need much more than that, maybe about ₦1 trillion that is being discussed about that to be found and which will be involved in this strategy in order to deploy it to manufacturers to be sure that those who will be benefiting from whatever fund, special fund available will be manufacturers indeed. And when I say intervention, get me right, we are talking of loan that is affordable at single-digit interest rate, not like anything else. So if this happens, then that would be a way to cushion the effect of the problem that manufacturer faces today. But loan alone is not sufficient, mark you. Loan within a very turbulent environment will do little. It will be helpful, but only do little. There should be deliberate efforts to improve the myriads of infrastructure problems that we have inherited as they have up to date. It is imperative that this be addressed conscientiously and with high sense of focus so that we'll have an enabling environment that will work. Lastly, before I end this one, very important is that the government should really deliberately pursue implementation of that presidential order that tell us to buy made in Nigeria goods. This has not been strictly followed. In the past, it was really not followed to an extent. With a lot of advocacy we are making, we are sensing the possibility that this should become something government will embrace. We should accelerate this one, because if government really follow it through, then most of our goods will be consumed. When it is consumed, we can produce more, become more efficient, become more competitive, and it will be very good for the business. When government start this, then all others, I believe, will follow. I think that could be, even government can declare a day for Manufacturers' Day, when everybody will really make use of made in Nigeria products.
Some fantastic propositions there. Thank you for those thoughts. Now, in the spirit of buy made in Nigeria, consume made in Nigeria, some may put forward the argument that the issues here are compounded, and focusing on the interest rates is not really holistic. There's some analysts who say the real issue, although yes, interest rates are a factor, that the real issue is the devaluation of the naira. What are your thoughts when we balance the things that have impacted the manufacturing sector? How much of a role has a devaluation played that's in comparison to the impact you're feeling from the increase in interest rates?
Thank you very much. That's another angle, and that is a very important thing too. If you look at what has happened recently, I will couple it to another one: the devaluation of naira and the energy cost. These two play two major catalysts. If resolved, it will be a catalyst to bring us out of current situation we have. But however, the Forex has come to stay the way it is, the way we're looking at it. We need to work on this properly because it brings unpredictability of business in the way it is now. You cannot really do a plan of a long-term plan without having to revisit it every time and change your plan almost every month this time, even 2 weeks at times, because the rate changes every time and you can never tell. When we look at this, you find that it has really let cost of goods rise so much high, coupled with the interest we just discussed about. Another problem we are having too in the manufacturing sector about this Forex rate is the way we pay the duty. Currently, or in the past, the duty rate is based on the FMDQ rate, or the interest rate, Forex rate at the time when you want to pay the duty or you declare the goods. We have tried to have a meeting with the government about this, that we should have a fixed rate that could be reviewed periodically, so it will enable us to really plan our costs in advance of the arrival and be more strategic in doing business, rather than be reacting to the environment. We should come to be proactive. So that is a very major problem for us. So if you know the rate and it is fixed to an extent, not that it is fine because it's devalued already, but you can now start to plan given this rate that you know. Then number two, like I wanted to mention, you didn't mention too, is the energy cost, which has shot up by about more than 200% in the past year. We are still discussing this. This is not ideal because it is not really helping us at all.
All right. Real quickly, I also want to come back to that energy cost and also add another question to it. What will be an ideal rate? Because I see the federal government trying to mediate between you guys and the DisCos as regards energy costs. And they are claiming that, oh, our rates are one of the cheapest in West Africa. What would be the ideal rate of tariff, per hour for manufacturers to be able to break even or to be able to make some decent profit as we speak today based on your calculation? That's number one. Number two, For some of your fellow manufacturers that are millers and the likes, this import waiver on food, you know, to be able to get some grains in for those that want to mill locally and things like that, what's the effect on your market like? The one that was recently announced that was span from 15th of August to December. But the first one is on the tariff rate. What would be an ideal tariff rate for you manufacturers now per kilowatt hour
to be able
to break even and do some good business?
Thank you very much. It's difficult to really, at this point in time, to just tell you what the ideal rate should be. We are looking at so many things because the NERC and others have tried to make some presentation, and we have made the presentation too. But definitely not something going up to 100%. It could have been fine, whatever the cost we have, which was about 65, 85. If you're having about 50% increase, that could have been ideal. That would be fine. And we can deal with that for the meantime. Jumping to 100, 150, 200% is surely unacceptable. It's not, it can't be sustained. Sustained in the sense that it can compel payment, but definitely it's going to be have a serious adverse effect on the economy in the long run. I think the NEC and other organs of government should not do a sort of a micro strategy. It should be a strategy that is really broad-based, weighing the effect on other aspects of the economy that do not have a boomerang effect on the overall objective of the economy. So optimization of objective of NEC is a problem. And NEC should really look at each, come to the round table with us, and bring that discourse to a minimum level or an ideal level that at least we can operate for the meantime. So, and about the import waiver, I didn't get to carry more right there.
Yeah, so about the import waiver, there are some of your members that might want to also participate in this that might be millers. You know, if they use the import waiver regime to import their seeds and they can mill locally and things like that. What's the effect? Is it a welcome development for you guys?
Yeah, that's fine. Import waiver for some time is good. I mean, it's a short-time approach to really ease the inflation that is really increasing, particularly in that sector of the economy. It's okay, we welcome that. But more so what government should assist manufacturers to do is to have what we call a strategic backward integration plan. On our own, we are doing this on our own. But you agree with me that if you have the government, which is might, backing the business operators or in a particular direction, you achieve better results, faster results, and efficiency than if the private investor itself is striving to do it on his own, more so with borrowed funds at a very high cost. So my proposal is that government should look at strategic area that you want to develop, that you want to really grow.
Like what areas?
And back manufacturers along that side.
Like what areas do you think they can come in?
Government will look at it holistically. I mean, definitely. There are a lot. From the immediate one, like food and beverages, which are doing better, to chemicals, and to main manufacturers. You want to look at which of our sectors are import dependent on their raw materials. A short-term one is to look at the economy and see what it can do to cushion it by doing fast backward integration in some area. But the long time is to really look at what are the major dominant, or what are which sector really make a major demand on Forex. Why do they do so? That would be wisdom. When we find this one, we want to see, okay, why do they depend on? Don't we have the resources locally? And majorly we have. What can we do to create a linkage and do backward integration so that in the medium or long term, there will be less dependent on importation of these products? So that would be a beautiful survey. And we are willing to cooperate with the government to identify this and bring proposal to them and discuss it. Because our current endeavors is been yielding results in engaging with the government. But the major result is to see that engagement bring the fruitful outcome that we desire.
All right, thank you very much. And I'm glad you talked about Forex because there were some issues around and I wanted to find out what the update on that is. The DG of man had talked about the difficulties that your members have faced as a result of government not honoring certain FX obligations with some forwards. Remember the whole CBN stance that some of them were not valid, and that because of this, they have difficulties. I don't know if this is still a challenge for your members. That's one, because if we're talking about the challenges that manufacturers are facing in Nigeria, let's talk about all of them since we have the platform this morning. Then the second thing I would like to just probe a bit more is where you talk about the directive by the president that Nigerians should buy Nigerian. What policies need to be put in place? Because like you said rightly, even though it's out there, it's not being practiced. We go to a number of government agencies where there are Nigerian alternatives, Nigerian-made alternatives that are not being used. What policies ought to be in place, or are there policies that exist already that should be enforced?
Thank you very much. Let me take you from the back. The policy is in place. Executive Order 003 is in place to address this. It's implementation. You know, like many people have said in the past, and we still know, Nigeria is never short of ideas. Neither do I think we are short of strategies, plans that could grow our economy. The issue we have is the implementation of what we have really put in place. If that is properly implemented, it's going to have tremendous effect on the business of manufacturers as well as general business as a whole. Now, having said that, which I mentioned this in my last the question asked earlier on. About the one you're talking about, you see about 2.4 trillion that is yet to be really honored, a billion Forex, or that, $2.4 billion, which is yet still outstanding, that is not yet honored by the CBN. This is very unfortunate because the CBN agreed to honor this. And if there's any reason that really make it to be impossible, we have not seen a cogent reason that invalidates this. We really are pleading, and still we are really pleading that this should be honored. It has a lot of effects, adverse effects on manufacturers, businesses generally, and economy itself, that's Nigeria. It affects our branding, it affects our reputation, because agreeing to meet an obligation, agreeing to do certain things, and not honoring that by yourself without anything that mitigates it, it's not only a breach, it's reputational damaging. So this is not good for us because it makes it difficult for us to even get more goods from this, our overseas suppliers. The trust isn't really checking. They're not too sure what to happen next. And definitely this is not good for the government, because how do you hold government liable for an agreement that it has made if it breaches this tomorrow? So we see having a front burner, like my DG has said earlier on, and we are still looking forward to what CBN and government will do generally to honor this.
All right, thank you so much for your time, and thanks so much for sharing all of this great ideas.